Hi, my name is Joanna Whitney. I am an intuitive artist and a student of natural law, and I'm still going through the book called On Conflict and Consensus by C.T. Butler that was written in 1987, about how groups can be run and still uphold individual freedom. And we're towards the back now, page 67, and we're talking about how a large group would be run. And they're talking about affinity meetings. So I was just considering that, and I just was thinking to myself, well, if the entire Front Range freedom movement were united, then all of our separate groups would be considered affinity meetings. So that would be like Boulder stands up, and it's what it's broken down into now, which I'm not really sure what that is. I think the New Earth potluck and some other things that I don't know about. Front Range Hours, Lafayette, Nyland group. Denver North would be the People's Rights Group and the North Denver Freedom Lovers. Then we would have Denver Stands Up, which is in Centennial. And also there's another branch in Littleton. We Are Change, Colorado, which is down in Lakewood during the summertime. And they meet loosely elsewhere in the winter. Free World Family, which is on Telegram. Patriots Serving Patriots in Longmont. Keep Colorado Free and Open in Loveland. And then there's a group, I think it's part of People's Rights in Conifer. And then there's a People's Rights group in Douglas County. And I'm sure I'm missing some, so. But then each of those groups would be considered affinity groups to the main group. And who knows, that may happen someday. We may be forced to get together in that type of way someday, and then we might really need to utilize formal consensus decision making. Right now, the only group that I'm familiar with that's using any form of consensus is the Front Range Hours group that I'm a part of. Most of the groups that I just named are all run by one person, or maybe they have a helper running it, but one person is running it. So in Front Range Hours, there's 4 of us, and we make decisions by consensus face to face. And so I feel like that's real progress is being made there. It's easy to have one person run things, but it's a lot different to have an egalitarian system where we work things out together and we don't make decisions on our own without discussing our decisions with others. Sometimes we have to make a snap decision, but then we discuss it with each other face to face so that we stay on the same page. Because if we didn't do that, it would probably fall apart, I would imagine. Because like for Front Range Hours, one person cannot handle all of the tasks involved in creating a currency and a website and a market every month. We have to have at least the 4 people that we currently have. So in order to have those people, we have to make decisions equally so that everyone feels heard and feels supported, and so that we feel spiritually connected to one another, like we're having a spiritual experience as a result of being together, and therefore it's growing us to continue to be together. Otherwise, we would fall apart, and I've seen other groups fall apart for whatever reason, but I would suspect it has to do with one person running the whole thing and the other people becoming disgruntled about it and just getting bored with it. But I don't know how many people know that we actually have to learn how to work together. So we're on affinity meetings here. And I just wanted to put that out there so to give you like a context within which to think about what an affinity meeting would be with regards to our whole freedom movement. So it says all business, financial, and policy implementation decisions are made at monthly affinity group business meetings. I mean, that would mean that we would maybe have like a giant Front Range conference every year. This is not a bad idea. I'm kind of into it suddenly. The idea of us somehow joining together and having a giant Front Range conference every year somewhere. We could even do it like in a national forest like the Rainbow Gathering, and therefore not have to spend any money rather than trying to make it like at a hotel or something like that. But and then we could, you know, have workshops presented by each of the groups if we ever were organized well enough to do that. I mean, it could be really super fantastic to have something like that. But anyway, then we would really need to use something like this in order to get along with each other and come up with how to run it. This business meeting is in addition to other kinds of affinity group get-togethers each month and may be a part of a longer affinity group event. All members of the affinity group are expected to attend. You know, it's funny that I'm reading this right now because of this malaise that I've noticed. Maybe I think it may have started before the scam, but I think what it is, I think it boils down to materialism, and I think we're seeing it a lot in the barter market where people don't know what they have to offer. Like they've lost touch with either what they're passionate about or what they actually could offer other people that would be of value. I think that all of it is tied together as a result of falling for the scam of materialism and buying products and allowing the media to replace your imagination with their pictures and their ideas. And it just makes us fall into this malaise of thinking that I don't have to show up every time to an event that I might support, but I don't personally feel that I have to show up at the event. But, you know, it always comes back to if there were only two people on Earth. This is like an old adage, an old way to make an analogy. If there were only two people on Earth and I made a commitment to show up once a month or once a week to meet with that other person, if I didn't show up, that person would be by themselves. And therefore I would have broken my commitment. And that is what I've seen, you know, a lot is that, you know, we make commitments to an event or to an idea mentally, or we even promote it. We even talk about it like it's a really great thing or whatever. And then when it comes to showing up to the event, we don't show up. And, you know, when you don't show up, you're not there. When you don't show up to the event, we who are at the event notice that you're not there. Your unique energy that is one of the instruments in the orchestra that makes up our freedom movement is silent. And the part that you play doesn't get played. And this is part of the spiritual sickness that has transpired. I think it started before the scamdemic lockdowns, but ever since the lockdowns, I think people have become much more selfish, but there's a downside to it. I think that the downside to that not showing up is that we think it doesn't matter if we show up. Like, it'll be fine if I don't show up. If I don't show up, other people will be there and I don't have to show up. And that's just not true, actually. It's actually not true. If I don't show up, then I'm missed because I'm not there as part of the group that I committed to. And therefore I'm not committed, you know what I mean? And if I'm not committed, then we have nothing to stand on. You know, it's almost like our raft. We're floating out in the sea, and every board in our raft matters. And if one board decides not to show up, then there's a leak in the raft. So I'm just putting that out there because where it says all members of the affinity group are expected to attend, that's true. And I'm a member of several groups that where I noticed this. For example, I put on a workshop every Sunday for my tribe. That's the group I refer to often about having lost touch with our principles. And I put on this workshop every Sunday. I've been doing it since October 16th of 2022. And we're in our 28th week. And when we first started, there was about 10 people coming every week. And then it slowly dwindled down to now where there's like between 4 and 6 people that show up. And we do a potluck every week for an hour before we start the workshop. And I always bring a salad now. That's just what I bring because, you know, whoever shows up, it's definitely something to eat. And then other people just bring whatever. And it always works out. But what I've noticed is I'm the only one who has showed up every time. That's true. I'm the only one. And I was thinking about it. You know, it's been going on for 28 weeks now. And at this point, if I did not show up, the other people that show up could put on the workshop because we're basically reading a book and discussing it together, and they could do it. They could actually do it, but would they do it? Because somehow I am the celebrity in that group. I'm the one who makes that group happen. And if I didn't show up one week, I bet you that no one would show up the following week because they haven't taken ownership of the group. They love the group. They enjoy the group. They eat the salad. They bring cookies or whatever, popcorn or whatever they bring. But if I did not show up, that would be the last one of the workshop. And this workshop's just going to go on until we get through the book that we're reading. And I don't know how long it's going to take. And we might read another book, I'm not sure. But someone said that they wanted to take a break before we started the next group, the next book. And I can guarantee you that if we take a break, no one's going to show up for the next one. Because we've basically gotten to the point where we are just getting by with the least amount of effort necessary. We say we really like it, we really enjoy it, but we would just replace it with something else like TV, like a TV show, or I don't know what we would replace it with. We might miss it. But we don't make enough of an effort to actually establish it as a thing that's going to be done from now on. And that has to do with the double-edged sword of a lack of commitment, a lack of willingness to see the process through, a lack of willingness to show up, to go through the process of planning and showing up. But on the back end of it, I think, is a low self-esteem issue, which is that we don't think we really matter. And I think that has been promoted through the media to make us believe that we don't really matter. And I think that it was illuminated or underscored by the scamdemic and the lockdowns, because we discovered that it didn't really matter if we showed up. It didn't really matter if we got together. It didn't really matter if we stopped doing all the things that we were doing, because we're still alive. And so we learned that we can get away with not showing up. But what has happened is that our fellowship, like my tribe's fellowship, has totally disappeared. It's gone. And people basically think that's fine. I know it. I know they don't see the repercussions of it being gone, but I do see the repercussions of it being gone, because we do still meet for another regular event. And what was our fellowship where we used to meet now takes up part of our other thing that we do. And it's basically bleeding into that and degrading it and eroding it into a lower form of itself, because we are not making that extra effort that we used to make to get together at a separate time. So I'm just bringing this forward because I think the freedom groups could learn from that, because it's the same thing. It's society, what we were taught by our experience of the scam lockdowns. And they wanted this. They, this is part of their incremental destruction of society, is to get us to stop making that effort to get together. Encouraging our laziness, encouraging our comfort zone, as you might call it, encouraging us to feel like, oh, it's too cold out. Oh, it's too hot out. Oh, it's raining. Oh, it might be icy out to drive. Oh, I don't feel like, I really don't feel like going. Oh, something's more important. And then what has happened too is work, like the slave trade of work, how work has become like they like at the last minute tell people that they need to show up. Like they have a schedule, but then they, tell people that they need them to show up. And then people end up canceling their commitments outside of work, and they let their boss tell them that they need to show up on this off time, instead of saying, no, I'm sorry, I already have plans, like we used to. And then incrementally, the job becomes more and more of a slave trader and telling us what to do, what we can and can't do. And so this is what was planted. This was what was planned at the Tavistock Institute and the Aspen think tank in Aspen, Colorado. I don't know how many of you know about that. You probably know about it, but there's a think tank in Aspen. These are what are being planned for us to degrade our communities ourselves, so that, maybe when the 15-minute city comes along, we'll be more likely to say, oh, okay, sure. Anyway, onward. All members of the affinity group are expected to attend. Non-members are welcome to observe or give reports when invited. Yeah, that's an interesting statement. Non-members are welcome to observe or give reports when invited. What I've noticed is that non-members think they can just show up anywhere and say whatever they want and just become members. But that's not the case, actually. If not, I mean, I like what he's saying here because it reminds us that to become a member, you would have to petition the membership. There'd have to be something. There'd have to be some way to become a member. I mean, you can't just become a member of the Boulder Stands Up Signal group. You actually have to go through a certain process to become a member of that group. Kind of have to be vetted. That's not true for all the other groups online, but when it comes to, like, you know, We Are Change Colorado, they don't give out the address of the person who holds the monthly potluck. They just say where it is. Like they say it's across from Crown Hill Park in Lakewood, or they say it's on the corner of this street and this street. And this is so that we keep the trolls out if we can. I mean, I'm sure the trolls still get in. There are some trolls. I actually know of a few of them already, but non-members are welcome to observe or give reports when invited. It delineates that there are members and there are also non-members. A quorum is attained when at least 2/3 of the current affinity group members are present. It is suggested that decisions be made by consensus using formal consensus, but each affinity group can decide what process they want to use internally. Notes are taken at every affinity group meeting. The note taker is expected to reproduce and distribute the notes in a timely fashion, but no later than 10 days before the next meeting. In addition, a copy of the notes for each affinity group meeting will be kept on permanent file with the community archivist. Access to these notes will be granted to any community X member upon request. So community X would be, you know, the main group. That would be, you know, Front Range Freedom Movement, if we were such. So these days, you know, of course, we would just send it by email and then no one would read it. So I'm just presuming that just from my experience. So actually the barter market just started taking minutes, and we have a notebook that we're taking minutes in. And if we ever got bigger, I guess we would probably distribute the notes somehow. I would always recommend that it be done by mail because you do want people to read it. And I can speak for myself and say that I don't read a lot of the stuff that comes to me by email. It's very difficult for me to read off the screen. I really need a printed material to read, which is why I printed this book and bound it. So again, I would recommend that it be done this way, but I doubt it would be done this way. I doubt it would be, because we don't do these things anymore, you know? But it's something to think about. I'm going to just go on a little bit further. Annual community meeting. The community meeting occurs at least once each year. So if, let's say, we had a Front Range Freedom Movement conference once a year, that's what they would be talking about here. The community meeting occurs at least once each year, generally in the summer. All members of the community are invited to attend. Notice of this meeting will be mailed to all members at least 1 month in advance of the meeting. A quorum is at least 10% of the current members. A meeting will be deemed adjourned if a quorum is lost. All decisions are made by consensus using formal consensus as defined in this book, including adaptations defined in formal consensus at Community X meetings. The community meeting is the highest decision-making body in Community X. All or the, the Front Range Freedom Movement. All major policy decisions which affect every affinity group in the Front Range Freedom Movement need to be passed by this meeting. Any decision made by another part of the Front Range Freedom Movement can be reviewed and or overturned by the members of a community meeting. Only members can raise concerns. A minimum of 3 volunteer members will be appointed to each committee at the annual community meeting. Notes will be taken at every community meeting and kept on permanent file with the archivist. Access to those notes will be granted to any Front Range Freedom Movement community member upon request. The cost for copying and mailing is the responsibility of the member. So that said a lot there. I mean, I don't even really understand what they're talking about with regards to a quorum. A quorum is at least 10% of the current members. Well, I do. So that would mean that at least 10% of the members of the entire Front Range Freedom Movement would have to be present in order to have a quorum and in order to make decisions. And they said something else about a quorum earlier. Well, they said a quorum is attained when at least 2/3 of the current affinity group members are present, which is interesting actually, because in my tribe you can't count on anyone ever showing up. So the people who don't show up aren't there. If we waited for them to show up, we would never make any decisions. So this would probably just have to be decided by the group, because, for example, like what would happen with the Denver barter market, if we had had minutes that were taken by the original group when the second group showed up, and people who represented that group present, which there were I'd say three people from that group, and we had those minutes that represented the initial desires of that group, that could have been considered members being present, so that new people couldn't just change everything. But what happened was new people changed everything the second time we met. And I actually wasn't there because I had to work. See, just the same kind of thing I just talked about. And then the third time, a whole totally different group showed up, and it was completely changed into something else. But see, to keep that from happening, that's why you have your archivist, your minutes being taken. Everybody knows what was decided last time. It's everybody's responsibility to read the minutes from last time. Maybe the secretary will, or the archivist will read the minutes from last time, so that there is a quorum, although in a certain way, because in my old tribe, there was no way that people were going to show up, because we're just too selfish, honestly. That's why people just, sometimes they do show up. Some people do make a commitment to show up, and then other times other people don't. And so we can't just put all the business on hold because certain people don't show up. But that is what, a group would have to make a decision about that, how that was going to be handled, so that the all is not lost. You know, I just got this visual in my mind of like a sand bank, like a sand dune with ice plant growing in it. The ice plant keeps the sand from eroding the same way that the members of the group showing up keep the principles and desires of the group from eroding. And if something happened and the ice plant died, the wind would just blow the sand away. And that's the same way, that's the same thing that will happen if a group doesn't have members that decide things and write them down so that the next group, if they don't show up to the next meeting for whatever reason, the decisions of that were made and fought for don't just get blown away by the wind. So I'm going to stop there. Leave you guys that to think about. Till next time.